Your third unit PROSE in celebration of being alive by Dr. Christian Bernard, a South African cardiac surgeon who performed the world's first human to human heart transplantation in the year 1967. And he went on to develop many surgery techniques which are being followed even today. And in the later years, he established the Christian Bernard Foundation for the underprivileged, the helpless, the poor children throughout the world. And at the age of 78, he passed away. Now, this essay is the views of the doctor about life. Now, coming to the title of your lesson, in celebration of being alive. So, celebration is you celebrate something, a festival, a birthday, an event. So, on that day, it's special to you. You wear new clothes, you invite your friends, you go out, give a party. So, you have fun on that day. It's always a memorable day. That's what celebration is. Here, the title gives you in celebration of being alive. You are celebrating being alive. The reason you're celebrating is you're just living. You have a life. This life is once. It's a present by God. Each day is a gift given to us by God. So each day is a celebration. That's the idea of this title, and that is what is to be the lesson for you. Now, before we go into the lesson, there are few personalities given in your textbook, page number 67. Beethoven, Demosthenes, Helen Keller, Mariyappan Thangavelu, Mozart, John Milton, Sudha Chandan. So these personalities, Beethoven was a great music composer, but he was deaf. Demosthenes, the greatest orator of Athens, a statesman, but he was a stammerer. He couldn't speak fluently. His practice, hard work made him the best orator. Helen Keller, she was born deaf and blind, but she went on to prove herself, and she had a wonderful career as a writer, a lecturer. And then Mariyappan Thangavelu from our state. He is physically challenged, but he went on to compete in the Paralympic Games, and then he got us medals. So all these people, they were disabled, physically challenged, but still that did not stop them from moving on. They did not complain. They knew it was hard. They accepted what it was, and then they went on to prove that they were not different from the others. They achieved what they wanted to do by their determination, by their belief in themselves. So this life is what you have. What are you going to do with it? How is life to you? The perspective of life. That is what the lesson is going to be. The prescribed text is an extract of the speech of Dr. Bernard. Here he narrates two incidents that changed his perspective of life, his views of life. What did life teach him by the two incidents? That is what the lesson is about. The first incident, he talks about an accident he had a few years ago. One day, while crossing the road with his wife, a car hit him and he knocked into his wife, and she was thrown into the other lane, other track, and a car coming from the opposite direction hit her. So both of them were injured and hospitalized. Dr. Bernard had 11 broken ribs, chest bones, and a perforated lung, which means punctured lungs, holes. It was a severe injury. And his wife had a fractured shoulder. So both of them were in hospital, and lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Bernard suffered pain. He was frustrated. He was frightened. So all these emotions made him angry. Angry because it was not his fault. So he started to question, what did I do wrong? Why should I suffer? Why should this happen to me? See, I have patients to look after. I have operations to do. But here I am unable to move, lying here like this. Why should this happen to me? He started to worry. And also his wife was injured and their baby had no one to look after. So he was very much depressed. He was miserable. But at the same time, he remembered his father's saying. His father always used to say, sufferings made a person great. That's God's gift to a man. He gives suffering to a man to strengthen that person. But Dr. Bernard in the hospital did not believe it. He has seen suffering all over. His patients, his small children coming to the hospital crying. His heart patients suffering in pain, because in those days heart operation was not an easy one. Technology was not at the best. So it was a risky operation. Some patients he had lost. So he had seen sorrow there. Suffering of patients, suffering of friends. So everywhere he had seen suffering, and he did not accept his father's view saying that suffering can strengthen a person. So this incident made him very miserable. So this state of mind stayed with him for a very long time, that even after many years, during the end of his career, because of this accident, he started to have more consideration about the sufferings of the people. That is what he says. It's only because of the accident I have such a gloomy thought. Life is full of suffering. Children die before the age of 5. And even if they survive, they are either physically or mentally crippled. So life to him was just a picture of sorrow. Life was gloomy. That is what this incident gave him the view. His perspective of life was miserable. Life is full of suffering. But all this changed by just a incident he witnessed. That we'll see next. The second incident, the doctor goes on to narrate what he calls the Grand Prix of Cape Town's Red Cross Children's Hospital. The Grand Prix, it is an international motor racing. Car race, that's your Formula 1, or your bike race, MotoGP. So that environment is exciting, thrilling, where you have thousands of people gathered together shouting the name of their riders, and then the flags just waving here and there, the riders flying past each other on the racetrack, fighting for the championship point, neck to neck finish. All this was experienced by the doctor in the children's ward. How did it happen is, one morning many years ago, he saw a breakfast trolley left unattended. There was no nurse or a attendant near it. The trolley was noticed by 2 boys also. These 2 boys must have been very bored staying in the room. So they decided to have fun. So they very boldly came near the trolley, and one boy decided to be the driver and the other one a mechanic. And the driver, he was physically challenged. He had only one arm. The other one was amputated. And the mechanic who was sitting in front of the trolley, he was visually challenged. He was blind. So these 2 boys decided to race. So how did they do it? The driver with one hand and bending his head started to push the trolley very slowly. And the mechanic was helping the driver by scraping his foot on the floor and just giving force for the trolley to move forward. So the race started, and the noise it made, the clatters of the utensils, plates, saucers, and the laughter of the boys, that attracted the patients from the other wards. They slowly started to peep out. Then they came out and saw what was happening. They understood the boys' fun. They also started to get involved. It was a different scene. It was nice to see people enjoying. So they started to clap, encourage, shout. There was laughter, there was fun, there was shout. And to the doctor, it was better than the real Grand Prix. And so as the race continued, it had to end. The grand finale. What happened is, the trolley came to a stop and all the plates, the tumblers, everything clattered on the floor because it was so fast. And when it stopped suddenly, everything fell on the floor. The noise made the nurse, the attendant come running, and they saw the scene, understood the boys' fun. They shouted at them and sent them to their rooms. But these boys did not mind the scolding at all. They just had a victorious smile on their face, just smiled at each and everyone and went to their rooms. The doctor who saw all this knew the two boys personally. The mechanic who was blind, he had lost his eyesight because of an accident. One day, his mother and father, they were fighting. They were both drunk. And so, during the fight, his mother got angry and she threw the lantern at his father. It missed. And what happened? The lamp broke and fell over the boy's head and shoulders. A lantern is a lamp which burns with oil. So immediately the oil was on all over his face and shoulder and it caught fire. He was burning. He suffered 3rd degree burns, which means severe burns, and he lost his eyesight. And during the race time, he was just healing. His face was disfigured because his skin has been melted like wax. All his skin, from his hair to his neck, all his shoulder parts and everything was burnt. And the skin was now just hanging loosely at the end of his neck. It was a horrible sight to see. And if the boy had to open his mouth, he couldn't do it voluntarily. He had to raise his head, lift his head, only then his mouth will open. Such a pathetic condition. But the boy enjoyed his race. And coming to the driver, he had been doctor's patient a few years earlier. This boy had a hole in his heart and Dr. Bernard was the one who operated it. But now he's come for another reason. The boy had a malignant tumor of the bone. Tumor is a growth, an unwanted growth, and malignant means dangerous, harmful. It keeps spreading and kills the cells, just like cancer. So this was spreading in his bone, and that is why his shoulder and arm was amputated. And this boy knew that his recovery was not complete. The tumor was keeping on spreading. He knew that. He was with one hand only now. But even then, he enjoyed the race. He had fun. He was just forgetting all the suffering, and that time, that alone mattered to the boys. This scene was an eye-opener to the doctor. All his gloomy thoughts of life. Life is full of misery. It is full of sorrow. It was shattered into pieces seeing these two boys, because he had seen them suffer. But even then, at this moment, they were enjoying their life. So that made him realize that he had been seeing life in a different perspective. He was just seeing the other part alone, only the suffering. He forgot the another side. So that is what the boys taught him. Now Dr. Bernard understood what his father used to say. That suffering is a way that God tests you. He gives it to you in order to make you strong. Now these two boys have shown him that experiencing suffering makes you a better person. Only when you experience cold, the winter season, you'll appreciate warmth. Only when you know what darkness is, you'll welcome the sunlight. So these two boys have taught him a wonderful lesson of life. That is, it's not what you've lost that's important. What is important is what you have left. The two boys had lost so many things in that small age, but still they are celebrating life. So don't worry about what you've lost. That's not important at all. What matters more is what you have now, what is with you, this life, this moment. So appreciate it and celebrate your life. Being alive is just the reason to celebrate. So that is the message of the lesson and the lesson the doctor learnt from these boys.